joining me now on It's All Conspiracy is David Litton from EchoplexMedia.com. He hosts several podcasts that like to discuss conspiracy theories. And just full disclosure to the audience, Echoplex is a Patreon contributor to me. I also write occasionally for their website. And David, thanks for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. It's been a while since we've talked on Skype. I think been a couple years. I think.
Oh yeah. No, I was there. I talked to you a couple months ago on the show.
That was Discord. Yeah, on the show.
Yeah. All right. For those who don't know, what is EchoplexMedia.com?
Well, I mean, it's obviously a website, but that's not really a good answer, is it? Well, Echoplex Media. So we had this blog. Our first blog was called The Daily Echo, and it was more like a straightforward kind of politics blog. And I wanted to kind of rebrand. Well, not rebrand, but like put a website together for everything. And The Daily Echo was taken, and a friend of mine had taken to calling this place that I'm sitting right now the Echoplex, because this is like where we did most of our work, like where we would sit around and kind of smoke weed and drink and like write for the blog and whatnot. And so I just decided to call it Echoplex Media. And I kind of thought when we were starting that it was going to be more like, based on who I was working with at the time and whatnot on the project, I thought it was going to be more kind of straight up politics, like election stuff. And well, that's not how it went. As people started to listen to the podcast, it turned out that the content that people were more interested in that we were doing was the stuff about, the kind of cast of characters that we follow. I know people are kind of new to me if they're seeing this on your channel, but there's like this whole folklore behind all the people that we kind of follow around and make fun of on the show. And that kind of all started basically right from the drop. Us making fun of, well, you can see in the background, there's a painting of Madison Star Moon as a clown behind me. We started making fun of her. That got like a lot more traction than any other stuff we were doing. And then she called us, and that got a lot of traction because she was pretty pissed off at us, and it was pretty funny. And from there, it just kind of there's an hour of kind of straight politics on our Sunday show, but then after that, the whole rest of the show is conspiracy stuff. Sometimes the conspiracy stuff gets a little political too, but that's what happens when you have a conspiracy theorist in the White House, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we also write for the blog, and we write about a variety of things. We've been doing soundboards lately of people. Our recent one is of Tila Tequila. And when we put that on our soundboard here in the studio, I just put all the files up on the website so that people can press play on the individual files themselves or download a zip pack and maybe, I don't know, do a better show with our soundboard. Like the blog has other stuff. I like take on a lot of like what I think is going on with that I don't like so much inside the skeptic community. You write for the blog. There's a couple other contributors. My girl, the media wench, Ashley, writes for the blog sometimes. And yeah, that's the whole thing. I also rent this studio out. One of the big things that we try to do that I don't do such a great job of is advocate for open source software in media production. Everything we run here is all Linux, and the only non-open source piece that I'm running right now is Skype that I'm using to talk to you.
For those who don't know who Madison Star Moon is, like you mentioned, you like to make fun of certain conspiracy theorists. What's the story behind her?
Well, we could. We're only supposed to be here an hour. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I'll tell the story of us with her versus like telling the story about her, because I think maybe one day you'll get lucky and she'll get mad at you and she can tell you her own story herself on your show. I would advertise that. I would pay to advertise that if she came on your show. Like our story with her is she's like a chemtrails activist who also thinks the vaccines cause autism, that space is fake, but that's a newer one, I guess, for her. And that the 5G is going to do all kinds of bad stuff. Like the two things that we noticed when we first found out about her was the chemtrails, and she calls like cell phone towers death towers. And so she was doing some videos about that. And like right around the time our show started being a live audio show was when we found her. And so we would be doing content about her. And through whatever method, she found out that we were doing content about her. And then she called us, and that's like one of the most visited things on our website is the podcast post for the first time she called us. And As far as her story, I think people should go check it out. She keeps getting kicked off of everything though, so like her YouTube history doesn't go back that far. There's a big gap in the history on her public Facebook page from when she was using her private Facebook profile to post everything, and then she lost that and she lost all those videos. So yeah, I would just encourage people to just go check out her videos, or even better yet, just go to YouTube and search Madison Star Moon, because you'll find a mix of her content and our content.
Yeah. The cell phone tower controversy is regarding whether or not the radiation from, now when I say radiation, radiation's a scary word to people, but it's a question whether or not the radiation from that tower is like killing people and like causing cancer and stuff. And I'm surprised, like despite all the bad publicity about, or the bad things said about it online by people like her, there's not like a cell phone tower liberation front attacking cell phone towers.
There was one story that we covered a few weeks ago, maybe a month and a half ago. Man, time is like dilated now, right? Time every week feels like a year, but every year feels like a week. But a woman was shooting at people on the cell phone tower. I believe it was somewhere in the South, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, they had arrested her and she had fired on the tower, and she'd called many times saying that the cell phone tower was like a danger to her community and whatnot. So, but it's like the only incident I've heard of that so far.
What you mentioned chemtrails and vaccines. What are some of the favorite conspiracy theories you guys like to talk about?
Well, the one we don't, I can tell you which ones we don't cover, and why. We don't cover really Bigfoot conspiracy theories unless it's like funny stuff about people claiming to have had sex with Bigfoot. But that's not about Bigfoot conspiracy. We don't cover a lot of like UFO sightings. Those are the two big ones we don't cover. And the reason I think that we don't cover those, and we'll cover the other ones, is that the community around Bigfoot doesn't seem like they're about to like take up arms and start shooting people anytime soon. Do you know what I'm saying? The community around the UFO people, those people tend not to be like engaging in like what I would say is kind of scary rhetoric around maybe threats of violence against those trying to stop them from learning about the aliens. And if they do, it's like borderline stuff that's kind of funny, like Storm Area 51. Do you know what I'm saying? That wasn't really like that was just going to be a party if anybody showed up. There was nobody really going to get themselves killed storming Area 51. It was a joke. But for a long time, we were mostly covering chemtrails because those were the people spitting out the most violent rhetoric, things about like firing on passenger or passenger jets, or even cargo jets, or they wouldn't shoot at the military jets. Military jets might shoot back. Come on now. But that one we were covering. The QAnon people are starting to become more interesting as I think their numbers grow a little bit and their rhetoric is really violent. We're not really covering that as much though, because there aren't like so many prolific people doing videos about it who we think we can get angry enough to call us. But the flat Earth, here and there we do flat Earth, but some of those people are trolling. And the problem if you get a flat earther in your Discord is they'll talk for 3 fucking hours and it'll all be about Jesus and shit. And that's like not really, one of the things we really talk about. But I think we've mostly focused on like chemtrails and the cast of characters around that. But it's not like somebody who believes in chemtrails isn't also going to be an anti-vaxxer, isn't also going to believe that space is fake or whatever. They don't usually come in singles. The only people I've ever seen, like I said, who they only believe in one conspiracy theory, it's like Bigfoot or aliens, and those people are nice and they probably have like a lot of weed.
I agree with you that like some conspiracy theories like Bigfoot and aliens, like they're not as dangerous as other ones in which people can get hurt unless you're claiming this person, or I should throw in there the reptilian conspiracy theory. They're not harmful unless you're claiming this person is a reptilian, and you got to do some sort of amateur autopsy to prove it.
Well, my thing with the reptilian conspiracy, and like I try to talk about this stuff a little more carefully now that I'm used to being on Twitch, where they have like a more TOS than my podcast did. But my problem with the reptilian conspiracy is that I think a lot of people use that as a proxy for Jewish folks. That the reptilian, when you ask who reptilians are, you look at a chart and it's like almost all of these people are either culturally or religiously Jewish. Like when you start talking about who the reptilians are. Of course, Hillary Clinton's in there and stuff, but that's just because every conspiracy theorist hates Hillary Clinton for, pick your reason, whatever. I know people who aren't conspiracy theorists who hate her. So I think the problem with the reptilian one isn't so much about the reptilian conspiracy, is that it's like a proxy for other stuff that history has shown us has been maybe not quite the right thing to believe if you want your society to be a good place for everybody to live.
And that's kind of known in the conspiracy community when it comes to, anti-Semitism, portraying Jews as like superhumans or even beyond this planet.
Right, or the flip side is that they might be portrayed as like physically weak, so they use political power to suppress others. It could go either way, really. That's if you have an enemy, you have to make your enemy weak and strong at the same time, so that so that your followers or whatever are, not only they have to be confident that you can defeat the enemy, but they also have to believe that the enemy poses a legitimate and serious threat to like their way of life or whatever. So it has to be a strong enemy and a weak enemy at the same time.
Did you yourself used to be a conspiracy theorist?
I mean, after 9/11, like, because I've always been a leftist, so I really didn't trust George W. Bush. I really didn't trust Dick Cheney, like, and I was just kind of, I was just out of university at that time, just like, getting adulting, right? And so, I mean, I kind of believed. Well, I don't think I believed that it was like an inside job. I don't think I believed that it was like Mossad had done it. But I was on that in that sort of like in between space where I was like, well, boy, this is awfully convenient for the people in power who wanted to invade the Middle East anyway. So I'm not sure if that's conspiracy theory mindset, but now I see that like that kind of thought, and after I've been dealing with conspiracy theorists for such a long time, I just see that as like kind of the top of the funnel in some cases, like that I was at the top of the funnel, but I never went down to the bottom of the funnel, where you buy like, I don't know, the super male vitality from Alex Jones or whatever you do when you're at the bottom of the funnel. So I guess that's not really an exact answer, but I think maybe close enough.
And I think that's I don't think that's really conspiracy thinking. Like when you're saying like, gee, it's awfully convenient that this happened for these guys in power. I consider that like a form of kind of healthy speculation. And when like we do this every day when we question certain events or question someone's real and true motives. There's a way to do that without completely going off the rails, I think.
Yeah, and the other thing that's important is that like you don't have to accept every set of ideas that you entertain, right? Like you could entertain a set of ideas and then a couple weeks later, just through whatever process, people kind of decide things in different ways. You could entertain a set of ideas and then a couple weeks later decide, well, that's probably not what's going on, So I don't know for sure if I ever entertained the idea that like the Bush family or, the Israelis or whatever planned it. But I just do remember, thinking that like I said, that it was awfully convenient for some people whose political legacy was that of like war in the Middle East. So yeah, I'm not sure. I know I never believed in chemtrails. I have you can see it behind me. I have the X-Files I Want to Believe poster. I would love to believe in aliens, but I don't see sufficient evidence that they're visiting us. Like, so I don't think I ever was. I've always like loved the stuff though, like loved learning about conspiracy theories and whatnot. I always watched Ancient Aliens and shit, but I was like, wow, that guy's hair is cool. But I'm not, I'm sure I didn't buy it or whatever. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't think I was ever really a conspiracy theorist.
What do you think was the main cause? And you probably noticed this too with the 9/11 was an inside job movement of how it collapsed right around 2008 or 2008 or 2009. I'd say is when like it officially went to a nosedive, and like people weren't talking about it much anymore.
I think that a lot of these. I think that because it was based around a specific event, like that happened on a specific day, I think that it was going to die. And that conspiracy theorists were going to take up other causes or maybe just give up on it. And like it, as time passed beyond it, or, as more and more time passed, it just wasn't going to be in somebody's mind so much. like maybe there were kind of casual conspiracy theorists who believed that 9/11, might or probably was some kind of inside job, or some version of that. Everything from they put explosives in the building to, oh, they knew about it and let it happen, right? There were
Yeah,
everybody.
there's been a lot of people that like drop a lot of the main arguments that were being floated around back in the early 2000s, and then said, okay, it's not, maybe there weren't explosives in the building, but maybe it was an inside job.
I also think maybe George W. Bush not being in office anymore might have something to do with it, because I don't
Oh,
know the
yeah.
specific thing you're
Well,
talking about, but it sounds like, I mean, I think that like something like chemtrails isn't necessarily going to go away, because it's not like, on, February 4th, 2012, the first chemtrail was spotted or whatever, right? So I think it's gonna have more staying power. Like maybe the movement's certainly smaller than the 9/11 movement was at its peak, but it's not going to fall off. And I think that people got bored and Bush got out of office, and I think a lot of people maybe who are of the broader American left just kind of gave it up. And so it was because there was a new president now, and it wasn't people might have believed in it or pushed the agenda due to their politics. They didn't like George W. Bush and they wanted to undermine him in any way possible. So maybe that was some of it. That's a good question. I didn't even know that the interest like had died off. Like, was it? I mean, it wasn't like a shelf, right? It wasn't like, but it was like a nosedive in the interest around it, like on Google Trends or whatever, right?
well, kind of like an interest. Like you don't see like mass amounts of people anymore wearing those infamous 9/11 was an inside job shirts in New York as often anymore.
I think for the conspiracy minded, I think other conspiracies took its place. I think like if I'm not mistaken, I wouldn't be surprised at all if right around the time that died off, we started seeing more chemtrails posts starting around. I don't know this for a fact or whatever, but those who were truly conspiracy minded might have got bored with it. There's any number of reasons. I think my problem with this stuff is for a long time now, I've been in groups on Facebook and like following hashtags on Twitter and stuff. So I don't see this stuff dying down. It's just, it might seem to be increasing from where I'm sitting if I add myself to a couple new communities or whatever and kind of lay low to see what's going on. So, my perception of this stuff is probably pretty warped.
So yeah, and I think with chemtrails, like that's something that'll stay because there's not really a political affiliation one way or another for people that believe it. Like they're not saying that Bush or Clinton were primarily the people that did it. Like with 9/11, you're saying George W. Bush did the 9/11 attacks, but with the chemtrails, no one's making the argument that it's like coming from one political figure.
Right. There was a few fucking wackadoodles who thought Trump was going to stop the chemtrails when he got elected.
Not to mention that.
But I mean, just because I see that doesn't mean that it's like a common belief in the conspiracy movement. I remembered it because it was fucking stupid, right? Because it was so outrageous that it just takes up a place in my mind that I could be remembering something useful instead of that,
So yeah, I want to address the big elephant in the room. We kind of already mentioned it, and that's with Trump being a conspiracy theorist in the White House. He's kind of become made everybody's gullible uncle, the forgotten American, with his mainstreaming of conspiracy theories and legitimizing crazy things your uncle might send you through email or post on Facebook.
Yeah, we joke around that we caused all this, right? Because we were for a while like mixing news and conspiracy on our audio show. Like we obviously didn't cause this, but like, there's something I wrote on our website about the whole world going red light. And for people who don't know what I'm talking about, red light is the part of our show where it's just like straight conspiracy theory. And I noticed that to the best of my knowledge, what happened was sometime around 2014 or 2015, the same sorts of networks and I talk about this stuff carefully because people talk about this in a really sloppy way. I'll call them maybe networks of influence through fake accounts on Twitter and Facebook might be a good way, because just calling them bots, people assume that it's like an automated thing, right? And that's not really what's going on. But the dry run for what people believe happened in 2016 we'll just use bots for like shorthand, but understand that I don't mean that they're AI or whatever. there are people sometimes moderating those accounts. The dry run for that, for what people believe happened in 2016, seems to have been in 2013 and 2014, mostly on Twitter, but some also on Facebook with anti-vaccine posts. And they also did some stuff around Black Lives Matter and some stuff around, what was the other thing? It wasn't Flat Earth, because even the Macedonian propagandists aren't going to touch that one. I forget. The men's rights movement and the manosphere and Gamergate, right? So, this stuff that was like right in my orbit during that time. And so it kind of shocked me a little bit in 2016 when I saw like the same kind of phrasing, the same patterns of behavior happening among what appeared to be just kind of regular people engaged in the political process online, or engaged in talking about politics online to the best that we can in a comment thread where we all hate each other. And I saw the same patterns of behavior, and I was like wondering why like my I guess my fellow leftists and liberals and whatever didn't recognize the behavior pattern, like that some of this isn't genuine, some of this is designed to piss you off, some of this is designed to discourage you, to make you feel hopeless. These, and these are all sort of things that I had seen in various conspiracy movements, mostly probably from regular conspiracy theorists who didn't know what they were doing. But then I saw this again, like on Twitter and Facebook and the anti-vaccine movement specifically. And the idea was to try to discourage people who were, science-based medicine advocates, just almost through attrition. And I saw this, the same thing happening in 2016. And I was like, well, I know what the fuck this is. This is like either conspiracy mongering or some kind of coordinated effort by fake accounts, not unlike what I have done in the past, to affect the conversation around certain issues. So the fact that these tactics, were first tested out on conspiracy theorists, and then we ended up with a man in the White House who, will repost QAnon accounts and whatnot. Like, I hate to say that it doesn't surprise me really, like that the tactics that happened during the election and the kind of conspiracy behavior, they sort of match up to me. Like they seem like they're in the same orbit or whatever. But again, it's kind of, this stuff is all like more complicated, and things aren't always what they seem. I can't just point to some account and tell you that's a propaganda account, right? I don't know for sure, because that could be a person who has been subject or has observed the behavior of these kinds of accounts and has started to mimic that behavior because it seems to discourage their political enemies or their, the pro-vaccine advocates or whoever it is that the behavior of, either intelligence services or private entities or, organized crime or whoever it is, have done before. So it's this stuff isn't really as cut and dry as it once was, especially when we talk about conspiracy theories and how they interact with politics and stuff. It's just everything's just all in one nasty pile, like a really bad casserole.
And I think a lot of sociopaths have used this as a way of coping with their psychopathic urges, with trolling people online and getting the reaction with subject matter like this. I don't know if that's a better good alternative, but I think it's better than cutting up squirrels.
Well, I think it depends. I don't think anybody should hurt animals, by the way. I mean, I do like a nice steak every once in a while, but I don't think people should be cutting up squirrels. But I don't know if that person that you were talking about were to gather 500,000 followers and scare the fuck out of all of them, and then all those people are on edge, and some of those people are little fucking psychopaths themselves, and then follow in that person's footsteps and build their own little community around their own conspiracy beliefs, or even beliefs they don't themselves hold, but know that if they put them out there, they'll get the attention they want. I don't know which is more harmful. It's kind of hard to compare the two, because one is like, one would get you kicked off of Facebook for like torturing an animal on Facebook, and the other, well, I don't know, you can buy ads. You can buy ads against the other one, right? So it's hard to tell which is more harmful. It's certainly more grotesque to watch someone do something like that to an animal, but on a societal level, it's hard to tell. I talked to a guy named John Atack who does some work on cults and control groups, and he and I had sort of worked out that a lot of conspiracy movements are almost like a distributed cult. Like more, like a torrent version of a cult, kind of, where instead of there being one leader, like in Scientology, the David Miscavige is the leader of Scientology. Well, in the sort of more distributed cult of conspiracy theories, you have like more smaller leaders that are like nodes within a network. It's not so top down. It's like a more flat cult, almost like flat like the earth, and it's just an idea we kind of bounced around, and I think it's kind of an interesting way to think about these like networks of conspiracy beliefs and extremist networks. You can think about that about any network, even like the networks we're in, right? We're in these kind of goofing on conspiracy. You're more on the debunking and talking about the reality, and we're definitely like way more in the like goofing on, trolling and polemics side. But there's a bunch of little nodes in what we're doing too, where people are varying degrees of popularity, and a lot of us are connected to one another through another. So it's not always that it's a bad group of people where that's happening. It's just that the internet has sort of enabled this distributed, this kind of distributed network of people to operate in any sphere, and that is just the same as for conspiracy theorists and extremist groups as it is for folks like us who are either trying to educate the public like you are, or me just trying to goof on people and maybe peel off a few of their followers through ridicule. And it's just a really kind of an interesting way to think about conspiracy movements. They're more like control groups than they are like anything else we've ever seen. And then the internet is the only way that could have ever happened.
With these bots that are both IT operated and controlled by people with whatever kind of interest in making these bots, that's what you just said. You've demonstrated that we as a country were vulnerable when it came to the Russians running those bots and trolls and all those different types of different political fake accounts in order to divide us. They took advantage of our vulnerability with that.
Yeah, me and a couple people, I think you're in Chemtrails Are Killing Us on Facebook, right? The group, me and a couple of people in there, we were noticing it in real time, and we were kind of talking about how the behavior was like 100% fucking already familiar to us. Like, and it's not like we're smart. It's just that we happen to, instead of being interested in sports or being interested in cars or, whatever other things people start getting interested in getting communities around, we got involved in a community that happened to be debunking and taking the piss out of something that was going to be very important going forward for not just America, but Great Britain. A lot of the stuff around Brexit was based on conspiracy theories about immigrants. And well, I don't know enough. You know what? I'll stop talking about Brexit because I've learned a little bit not to talk out of turn. But the same operation was going on over there, and not everybody doesn't have time in the day to fucking know what a conspiracy theory is. Everybody doesn't have time in the day to know how these things spread. People don't have time. Most people are, they have a partner or they don't. They have kids or they don't. They get up, they go to work, they hang out with their friends. They like to go watch football. They like to go get drunk with their friends, or maybe they like to cycle. And they don't spend time doing this. So it's not like we're, you can't just go run around blaming the electorate for this having happened. I think that maybe it's just going to be a tough learning process, and some countries are going to catch on quicker than others, and I'm afraid that the United States is probably going to be a little behind the ball on this, even though we invented the internet or whatever. I just think that due to the way that our country is, the everything from the influence of religion in our government to just the fucking women my age in Napa who have a big house who think essential oils are going to cure them. We've just always kind of liked these kind of stories as a culture. This is like a little bit hard. This is something I would write a blog about. So kind of bear with me here, but we've always like kind of these stories where we're the underdog, and that we've always just like these untrue stories about ourselves as Americans, I think. And so we're prone to conspiracy theory, like spreading like wildfire, either through before all the fucking propaganda accounts were happening. It's not like there weren't conspiracy theories spreading like wildfire on social media. It's not like the Russians made us conspiracy theorists. It's that, and I don't know, that it was necessarily the Russians. I just like to say like groups other than, groups that didn't have the best interest of the American populace at heart, right? Who were engaging in propaganda campaigns. it's not like they made us conspiracy theorists. They figured out that as a culture, we're going to fall for this stuff because we love these grand narratives about ourselves. And so if you spin a false grand narrative about a group of people, they're going to want to believe that. That's not, and so I don't think conspiracy theories going mainstream were because someone else pushed them on us. I think that the conspiracy theories going mainstream was because folks first, before this even happened, people were networking based upon them and recruiting. And then the, interests outside of the United States that had every reason to propagandize us were just going to use things like conspiracy theory, racism. Well, those two mostly. And, they didn't do it. We did it to ourselves. And I don't know, one of the great things about our country, I think, is that we like to believe grand narratives too about ourselves, that we like to believe, like when bad shit happens, we're like, when people do bad things, this, oh, we're better than this. I don't personally believe that grand narrative, but I'd rather live in a country where they did believe that grand narrative. So it's like they're using one of the things that people kind of use to get through troubled times against the populace. Just our love for grand narratives. The French are fucking cynics, man. Try to sell them a conspiracy theory about their election. They're like, no, we're too busy rioting in the streets about like the real shit we don't like about the president. Get out of here with that weird reptile shit. Like they're just a different culture than ours. They're an older culture than ours, and they have more experience with kind of overthrowing the power of their government than we do. So I think that in some ways we're like naive about government power here. And I think that that's easy for outside interests to play on.
Regarding Trump and Russia, what's your opinion of whether or not he has Russian connections, if any, financially, or like he's a conscious agent of Russia?
Oh, my opinion is that if he's a conscious agent of anything, it's probably not Russia. And I'm just like not convinced that he's really a conscious agent in a lot of the cases. But I don't mean to say that someone else is pulling his strings either. I don't think the guy thought he was going to win. I don't think that I don't think that there was some kind of cloak and dagger shit, like some fucking amazing James Bond spy shit going on. This was more like Get Smart. Or like Spies Like Us, the movie or whatever, where everybody's incompetent. I don't know if he met with Russians or, I mean, I know he had business dealings in Russia, but he had business dealings all over the world where he was trying to sell his little scam hotel name to somebody, right? So that I don't know. And it's some of I don't think some of it. I don't think we're ever going to know some of it, right? I get a little bit annoyed with some of the people, like with me on the left, mostly people to my right, but of the left, like kind of moderate liberals, because they got all in a fucking, they were all ready for Mueller to come up to the White House and put the handcuffs on Trump and arrest him. And like, I don't think we're ever going to know this shit. We don't know a lot of what happens behind closed doors. We don't know what the last president did behind closed doors. We don't know if he did shady shit during his campaign. We don't know if he got opposition research from, intelligence agencies of other countries. Some of this shit we're never going to know. And I don't think it's really that important. Don't get me wrong. Like, yeah, I think I said what I mean. I don't think it's that important. And I don't think at least that it's for people who like you and me are kind of anti-conspiracy theory, the other problem it presents to us is that if we talk a lot about Trump Russia, we start to sound like conspiracy theorists, right?
But I think that the thing is, well, this is with me. I said that I don't think that Trump is working with Russia. I think that he's just one of the gullible idiots on the internet that Russia got a hold of, that they're trying to convince with millions of people, and they were lucky to have Trump fall for things like saying that Russia was the only place for freedom. I'm sure you've seen these posts about like how great Russia is. Putin's a true Christian man. He's trying to make Russia great right now. Kind of the same mythology with Trump.
I think Trump, here's, and this is just me kind of speculating or whatever, but I think that there's a way about Putin that Trump wishes was a way about Trump. Putin is kind of a badass. I don't know if you've read the guy's biography.
Oh yeah, former KGB.
Yeah. I don't think he's a good person, but I think he's a fucking extraordinary person, right? Like, I think he's a fucking badass. And I think that in a lot of ways, Trump envies that and wants to be that. And so I think part of like why it appears that he's sucking up to Russia or whatever is I think he kind of wants to impress the guy in sort of the only way he thinks he can by pretending to be sort of this muscular, like, and I don't mean I mean it like figuratively and literally, because Putin's like a buff dude, like for an old dude, right? And so I think some of what Trump does, especially in relation to Russia, is that he just wants to like have that guy's respect and that guy's friendship, because that is an extraordinary person, a very dangerous person, but his career, even if a third of what you hear is false, it's still fucking amazing. And so I think that might have more to do with what's going on, if I had to wager a guess, than Trump is some spy. No, I don't think he's a spy.
I mean, he's totally unfiltered. Like, they wouldn't trust him with secret information if they did have such a plan.
Unless that's all an act, and in that case, then Trump is also an extraordinary person, right? If it's all an act.
And early on, like we know Trump's career. Like, he was I would say, leaning Democrat back in the 90s up to the 2000s, and then all of a sudden he had this road to Damascus moment where he's all magically now a conservative, starting with the birther stuff or pandering to stuff on the right.
I think that he didn't have a road to Damascus moment so much as that he's always been, I would say, at least comfortable with racial bias in his business dealings.
I think
that's what he said. So I think that he was going to tend to be more comfortable with a bias against Barack Obama, and that the bias was sort of this racist trope about him not being born in America because he has a funny name. You know, it sort of fit with the rest of Trump's behavior as it went towards sort of non-white people, from what we know on the record from court stuff from his business dealings. Like, you know, he had to pay this fine. He had to pay a fine in the past for not renting to black folks, and for, you know, and then he did that weird shit about the Central Park Five.
All places.
Yeah. And then that weird shit about the Central Park Five, where it turned out they weren't guilty, but he took out a full page ad. Like, what kind of psychopath takes out a full page ad about a criminal court case that's going on that they're not personally involved in? So I think he may have had generally what we would call for like the 80s or the 90s, like progressive views or whatever, because he was like a New York real estate guy. So he was going to kind of all these highfalutin parties. There were probably, you know, a lot of rich white people there, but some of them were gay and he didn't hate them. And some of them were women and they'd had an abortion and he didn't hate them for it. So I think that the Obama was born in Kenya thing was like a good opportunity for him to kind of go the other way.
Now we got to talk about Alex Jones. You posted
hold on. It's not human intelligence.
I never get sick of beef enchiladas.
The podcast Knowledge Fight. Have you heard of Knowledge Fight?
Yeah, I've been neglecting, like, trying to get a hold of those guys, because I think I'd have some fun with those guys.
Oh, I've talked to I've interviewed the host, Dan. I could probably refer you to him.
Yeah. If you don't mind, yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great, because I like their show a lot. They're funny, and they're like way more in depth than we are, especially about InfoWars.
Like, Dan might be the first thorough Alex Jones historian. Like, if someone's gonna write a book about Alex Jones after he dies, it's probably gonna be Dan.
Yeah, and if anybody would buy a book about Madison Star Moon, it would probably be my girl Ashley writing it, right?
So back to Alex Jones. You posted a video, or the website posted a video of Alex Jones going on a tangent on a restaurant, yelling at people. How did you obtain that video?
So that was kind of a messy story, and it all kind of came out right, because everybody was cool that was involved in the story. We had it was the first, I swear to you, it was the first email that I had to use my PGP key to decrypt, and it was the video. We got it at like 4 a.m. Like, I was asleep, and we emailed at 4 a.m. So the first thing I did when I woke up, as I had my phone, I was like, fuck, I don't have the decrypt on my phone. I was like, what is this? I've never, I thought maybe it was, I don't know. It was the first encrypted thing we ever got, right? So I was like, oh, hopefully this just isn't just some random death threat that somebody decided to encrypt. And so I decrypted it, and I watched the video. And, the message was like, hey, we're fans of your show, and we thought you should see this. we would, and so I immediately posted it to Facebook, and
it got 1 million views from your page.
5.
Whoa. Wow.
Yeah, it's unfortunate we only gained like 1,400 followers out of that, but it's whatever. But then we were contacted by the woman who took the video, and whoever sent it to us had taken it from her and sent it to us. And she came in a little upset, but then actually contacted her, and that girl's totally cool. So, she let us keep it up. We mentioned that it was her video. She didn't have like a media property or anything. If she would have had a media property, and it was on like a, for her blog even or whatever, we would have just taken the thing down immediately because it was her, her reach to get her exposure. But she was an individual, and Ashley spoke with her, and she was super cool. And so she let us keep it up. And then a couple newspapers picked it up and embedded it from our Facebook into their newspaper feed. That's probably where all the traffic ended up coming from. And now that the gal who took the video is like hangs out in our Twitch chat sometimes now, and she was like too shy to come on the air, so we like read a statement from her about her experience there and her having taken the video and stuff. So
and she wants to be anonymous, right? Like not really.
No, she was communicating in our comments under her real name. We used just her first name when we read the statement from her on the air, because there was no reason. Like, she wasn't hiding her identity, but there was no reason to give her first and last name. If somebody's not famous or whatever, we're not going to give their first and last name. It's, it was just really funny how that worked out, because it could have gone one way or the other. And I'm just really glad that we ended up kind of making internet friends with this girl. And she's super cool, and she's always talking shit in our chat now. So not the nicest way to meet somebody, but it all kind of came out really good in the end. And she was glad that we were getting the traffic versus, some, TMZ or some shit. Right.
Yeah. And that was convenient that you had a fan in that restaurant at that time capturing that moment.
No, she became a fan after.
Oh, okay.
We didn't get the email from her. Somebody like aped it from her personal profile and sent it to us and didn't tell us that's where they got it. So at first she was mad at us.
Oh.
Because we had aped her content. But then she met us and she's like, no. She's like, whatever.
With Alex Jones, do you think, like the Alex Jones of today, do you think he believes in what he pushes, or do you think he's a con artist, or do you think it's a mix of both?
Yeah. It's hard to tell, right? Because so much of what he does is so fucking theatrical and over the top in nature that, he's, I don't know, him or Howard Stern are the best broadcaster of our time, doesn't mean that what he's saying is worth listening to, but I think like as far as the performance goes, it's him and Howard Stern in our time who are the best broadcasters. And first I'm going to say that I don't think it matters if he believes what he's saying, because some people in his audience do, and they're fucking scary. But if I was going to speculate, I would say that he probably believes some of what he's saying, or on some level he believes everything that he's saying. But I don't think I don't think anybody really necessarily believes all those things in the extremely, kind of over the top, hyperbolic, and even like sort of violence inducing like way that Alex Jones presents the stuff. So I think he probably does believe a lot of it, but I don't think that he believes it as urgently as the presentation on his show would lead you to believe. But that's just a guess, right? Because we can't really get into anybody's mind. And even when he's been interviewed, you just have to take him for his word that he's like saying what he believes in an interview, So it's very hard to tell. And I've been saying for a long time that when someone's a public figure, like I really kind of don't care what their intent is or whether or not they believe what they're saying, because they're having like some kind of impact on the world that the rest of us have to live in. And so if Alex Jones came out tomorrow and said that it was all a hoax and he did it all for the money and that everybody was a fucking sucker, I wouldn't just be like, oh, come on under the tent now. I'd be like, okay, now you have to make it right. Now make it right. Do something, make it right. Spend a couple years trying to make it right, because I don't care what his intent is. On one of our other shows where we talk about the public intellectuals of the day, I'll just leave it at that. Some of them are like, oh, well, that wasn't really what I meant, or, how that you're misinterpreting what I said, because here's what I meant. And like one of the things we talk about is, hey, the people listening to your your broadcast are going to kind of take things that you say at face value, and most people are going to believe that what you said is what you meant. And so, it's like a whole different kind of area, but it's the same thing. It's like, oh, that's not what I meant. Well, that's fine, but you have a few million people watching you, so maybe you should communicate a little more clearly. And so, like, I've been like people on Twitch, like they're like, oh shit, here comes Dave. And like they'll have roundtables on Twitch, and I'll jump on there like, well, fuck, here we go. We're gonna get lectured about intent again. And but it's like really important that I think if even small audiences like yours and mine, like I don't think that if I meant well and I did something shitty, I would have to apologize for doing something shitty. It wouldn't matter that I meant well or that I was, I'd been drinking and didn't know what I was doing, which would be a likely reason for me to do something stupid on my show. But none of these things matter because there's some people, dozens, hundreds, whatever, who are maybe influenced by what I'm doing, maybe thousands, I don't know, in some way. But I'm responsible for how those people take what I'm doing and like what they do next to some extent. Like, or at least I should consider those things. And so whether or not someone like Alex Jones or, on a completely different end of the spectrum, Jordan Peterson, whether or not they really believe what they're saying, if they're speaking to millions of people who are then, behaving, that are kind of internalizing what those people are saying, and it's making their lives worse and making the lives of others around them worse, then I don't care if they believe what they're saying. It's like very unimportant. Like if we're friends and you say something to me and I take it the wrong way and you're like, oh, I didn't really mean it that way. Now I see what you're saying. That's different. That's like interpersonal communication, and people get each other wrong all the time, like in social situations, but it's different when you have millions of followers or even thousands.
Yeah. I think it does make a difference if the followers found out that their whole movement is led by the whole cause is based on a con. And BuzzFeed had an interesting story on, I don't know if it's true, but they interviewed people that used to work for Alex Jones, and they said that in the lead up to the 2012 election, Jones was in a kind of like having a breakdown, shooting his warehouse full of InfoWars products that he was making so much money off of under Obama, and then shooting it with a crossbow, saying this all might as well be gone because we're going to be out of business if Obama leaves. And then after 2012, they said when they asked if, well, does that mean you voted for Obama? Jones just smiled, and he might have voted for Obama in the name of business.
Well, it's also fair enough to say that Romney wouldn't have been good for business for him in the way that Trump was.
Oh yeah,
because Romney, he's like a stiff guy in a suit who kind of like sometimes pretends not to hate gay people, So it's like there's nothing, and I mean that's like a shitty like description of the guy. I think that he's like he runs a venture capital and a hedge fund or a venture capital, and he's been in the destroyed many even large businesses by buying them out and then like over leveraging their debt. But that's a whole different discussion. And I'm not an economist, but yeah, Romney would have been bad for business for him because even the people, he couldn't appeal to the people on the left who disagreed with Romney, because people like me on the left, our disagreements would have been policy. We wouldn't have bought that Romney was a fucking, that he was, controlled by the cabal or any of this shit. But the people that he was talking to who hated Obama, man, a lot of those people hated Obama because he was black or half black or what, half black is a dumb way to say it. Obama lived his life with all the prejudices that a black guy with two black parents would have had to deal with. Like it's not like him being half white, like it got rid of half of the prejudice he had to deal with. But Alex Jones was able to ramp those fucking people up the way that he wouldn't have been able to ramp up anybody against Romney. And so of course that makes sense that he wanted Obama to continue to be the president. Because then he would have had, if Obama wasn't the president anymore, he would have had to stop really doing political content. And like that mix of like fear-based politics and conspiracy theory that everybody's out to get you and take what's yours, that was his cash cow under Obama, and it's still kind of his cash cow under Trump. And I just don't think that like a boring guy like Romney, he would have been able to keep doing that kind of routine.
Yeah, and I think that. But I do think like if Romney did end up being president, Alex Jones would try to have to figure out doing something, because the boogeyman is now someone who's not as scary as Obama. But I think that what he would have done is like bring up something about Mormonism or and then connect them to the Masons taking over the world or something.
I mean, he would that would have been a bank shot, though. I think, it's just like so much harder to land that than telling everybody that the black socialist from Kenya is coming to take your guns, right? Like the one that you said is more far-fetched, but it also is like more, you need to think about it a little bit more, versus the other one. It's just this primal, like in-group, out-group fear thing. And I mean, he would have kept going, but I don't think his audience would have grown as much if Romney would have beat Obama, because there just wouldn't have been anything going on. Like it would have been all like, and to be honest, I don't think policy would have been that drastically different from Obama. So, and it's not like at that point Alex Jones had the option of tacking to the left and putting himself as part of the left opposing Romney's, I don't know, weird tax plan. Like what would have come through under Romney would have been like, it would have been stuff I disagree with, but it wouldn't have been like, there would have been no like primal fear about it from people who disagreed with the policy. It's just the guy he's an old guy who knows how to navigate politics. It would have just all been so very normal and just, to the right of what Obama was doing, assuming that he kept both houses of Congress. There just wasn't a lot to be afraid of there. The other thing, though, is there wasn't a lot to be afraid of under Obama. I don't think. It was just that, come on. His middle name is Hussein. Yeah. He's part of the Muslim Brotherhood. Like his mom was a secular humanist. It was just all this ridiculous stuff that even, most people on the right didn't care about that shit. And most people on, I know people who are politically, right of the center, and they're like, Obama's, I didn't like some of the stuff he did, but whatever. They don't hate it, they don't hate him. And he would have had to give up like riling people up around race and Islam. I don't think the Mormon stuff is as powerful. Like people don't have the kind of bias against Mormons that they do against Muslims.
It's not like Scientology. Like there's people dedicate their lives to fighting or leaving the church and then saying how horrible it is. But Mormonism, like most people I know that like left the church, they're just like moving on through their lives. Like if you ask them about, they'll say it's wrong, but they'll just like not dedicate it as much to say someone that left Scientology.
That's funny. We cover a lot of Scientology, and it seems like covering cults and stuff was really helpful. The other thing about Mormonism is, I'm telling you, it's a white religion. I mean, it would have been harder for Trump's racist base to turn, like because not everybody who believes in conspiracy theories is racist, but you get to the bottom of the rabbit hole, and there's usually a drawing of a Jewish guy that, that anti-Semitic one I'm talking about. So yeah, I don't know. If he had all this stuff about Obama in his warehouse, I mean, anybody who had anti-Obama stuff in their warehouse would have had a hard time selling it if Obama had lost in 2012. So it wasn't maybe necessarily about the show, but about the merchandise that he had sunk all the money in.
I'm actually talking more about like the survival gear and like super male vitality, stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know. He would have certainly had to change his programming, but I think he would have just gone back to like the Bilderberg group, and it like under George W. Bush, his conspiracy theories were less about the government and politics, except for 9/11, but that was a conspiracy theory. It wasn't all political. Under Obama, it was like the Democrats are evil, and that's where he kind of started doing that shtick. And so yeah, if he was like started down that road, it sucks to have to turn around and change direction, right?
Yeah, but he's gone to like a drastic direction when it comes to terrorism. Like he's gone from saying the terrorist attacks are fake, staged by the government's the real enemy, to now saying the terrorists are real. We need to use the full force of the government authority to go get them.
Or even more scary is that like your neighbors who you may not even know what religion they are, but you think their family is from the Middle East, that you need to be afraid of them too. And that's like the bigger problem with it. Like I understand that war is bad, but I think we're far less likely to go into like some kind of major armed conflict than we were like at the beginning of the 2000s, because we had not necessarily world peace, but the United States hadn't been heavily militarily involved in anything for a while. So people weren't like tired of war like we are now. So I think so he can't really be banging the war drum, but he can certainly tell you to be, to be afraid of your neighbor. And I think that war and being afraid of your neighbor, they'll just both erode your society, and one from the inside and one kind of from the outside, I guess.
Alex Jones is also facing several defamation lawsuits.
Hooray! Did you see his deposition?
His second one? And
I don't know. Did you see the one where he threw Dan Badandi under the bus?
oh yeah,
He's like, that guy didn't work for me. I told him to stop working for me. Stop telling people he worked for me. That shit was amazing. I'm really mad at the law firm because they took down my video about it because I used some of their clips
oh
from the
really?
depot.
Oh shit, I gotta be careful with that if I want to share some of their. How much was it? How much content
To be
did you?
fair, I was like late at night and I was just starting and stopping and went over the whole video, like with the people on Twitch. They took it off of YouTube, not off of Twitch. I didn't get a strike for it. They didn't like come for me or anything, but they wanted it to be taken down.
Okay. Yeah,
I
because
could have reached out to them. I could have reached out to them and asked them if maybe after the trials, like maybe they didn't want it up because the trial was still pending or whatever.
that
Maybe
might.
after the trial they won't care as much.
Yeah, because I used a lot of the most notable clips in there in my Alex Jones Christmas Carol video. So.
Oh, I used a lot more than you did. I
Oh.
used like the whole, like my Twitch chat was like, no, I know the rest of your panel left, but let's do this. Let's go.
Okay.
So,
I think I'm safe there.
yeah. They also did Watson. I don't know if you saw Paul Joseph
Oh
Watson.
yeah, I saw Paul Joseph Watson too. They had to do that when he was in the United Kingdom through Skype or something.
I think they did Owen Schroyer too. Man, I got to tell you, if they depose Dan Badandi, that'll be the best thing that ever happened because that dude is dumb as fuck. That dude will not understand any of the questions and start talking about how 1776 is coming for the law firm that's deposing him and shit. It'll be wild. But I think they probably don't. They probably know they won't get anything out of Dan Badandi, so that's pointless to depose him.
Well, they could use him to show how reckless Infowars was in hiring. Or did they hire him, or was he like?
I think he technically worked for them, yeah. But I think the video of him harassing the Sandy Hook parents, like with the Infowars logo on his stream and stuff, I think that demonstrates that pretty well. But I think for shits and giggles, they should try to depose that guy because that's like the dumbest conspiracy theorist. Like that guy, he won't call us or anything because we told him if he ever calls, we're going to give him a 3rd grade spelling test. That guy's never going to call us. I'm not kidding. I have a 3rd grade spelling test, like just in a Google Doc, like right here. If he ever calls, I can just pull it up.
I'm gonna see if I could get a hold of him. I mean, I've had the We Are Change LA guy on the show. We had a pleasant conversation. He said some stuff he said things that he agrees and doesn't agree with the 9/11 Truth Movement. But I don't think with Dan Badandi I could have a rational conversation with him.
So the one time we got a hold of him, one of the people in our Discord, the producer of another podcast, the Unwritable Rant podcast, which is absolutely nothing like what we do. He's the producer of it. His wife tells stories on it. They're funny stories about her and him, or maybe her life before she met him, like when she was in LA, kind of like a rock groupie or whatever. And he was listening to us talk to him, and he was on the phone, and Badandi was on the phone, and David, the producer from Unwritable Rant, was like, "Hey guys, you got to let me in voice." He's like, "I can't take this. I have to ask this guy a few questions." And so we got to sit back for a while like somebody in Chicago was on Discord, and then Dan Badandi was on the phone, and Dan Badandi won't talk to us anymore because David, the producer from the Unwritable Rant, who had never talked to a conspiracy theorist before in his life, just completely obliterated Dan Badandi like live on the air for everybody to listen to. But yeah, I got to say he has more of a sense of humor about like being made fun of than I think a lot of the other people do. And you're a super nice guy and you're different than us. I bet you could have him on. I just think it would be really hard for you to get anything out of him, like to get him to get to the point. Like I just think he's a dumb guy.
I like letting people just talk. Like even if I don't agree with it, I'll just like say your word, say your piece, like what's on your mind. So I'll see where that goes. Where do you see where do you see the defamation lawsuits going?
I thought he would have settled by now.
I thought it would come to that too, but no, I think he's fighting the fact that he has to say in the court of law whether or not he was lying or not, or admit he made a mistake or something.
Yeah, I still think he's going to settle, and I think one of the stipulations of him settling is going to be an NDA and no admission of guilt. But I also think that the one that's coming down the pipe that's interesting, that not the Sandy Hook families. I don't know if you remember after Parkland, it was kind of I don't know, he was a young guy. I followed him on Twitter too.
With a communist party shirt.
Yeah. Yeah, I followed him on Twitter, and he's, I didn't know anything about him. He just kind of ran in some of the same circles that I did on Twitter, just out of coincidence. And Alex Jones put his picture up saying that he was the Parkland shooter.
Yeah.
And there's a funny story about there's this lady named Julie Borowski that we used to troll. Like, she was always good spirited about it. Like, back in the day, she's kind of a libertarian, and we don't like share her politics. But she lives down the street from that guy, and she was in the Alex Jones comments on Facebook saying, "Hey, that guy lives down the street from me. I'm pretty sure he's in the neighborhood, and we don't live anywhere near Florida." She's like, "Why are you spreading this around? I see that guy in my neighborhood. Don't do this." And I was like, I hit her up, and I was like, "Hey, I'm glad you're doing that." She's like, "I remember you guys. We had some fun back in the days when you were goating pages." She's like, "You guys were always funny, and you were never like hella sexist and abusive like everybody else." And I was like, "That's not what I want to talk about." I'm like, "Thank you for doing that." I'm like, you have a blue check mark next to your name and hundreds of thousands of followers." And she was like in there just like commenting on everybody's shit, going, "That's my neighbor. We live in," I think it was like Michigan or something. It was like nowhere near like where that happened. And that's the guy who's not going to settle. That's the guy who wants Alex Jones to go on TV or go on his show or go wherever and be like, "I lied about this person." I don't know the guy. He's not my friend or whatever, but I think from what I know about that case, that's the guy who's not going to settle. And that one's coming down. That one's not like on the menu or whatever right now, or no one's talking about that one. And unless that got settled or thrown out and I don't know about it, I think that's the one to watch as far as people who aren't going to settle, because Alex Jones put that guy's life in danger.
Yeah.
In like a really significant way, in a situation where a lot of people were mad. But if somebody would have found him and figured out that he wasn't in Florida like a few hours after the attack, like, unless the guy's got his own private jet, it's just. But these are Alex Jones fans, right? They'd have been like frothed up with anger. But yeah, I think that that's the one that's gonna not be settled, if I had to guess. I don't know anything about the Parkland parents, and in fact, I've kind of made it my business to not look up I don't want to know their names. I don't want to know anything about them. They're fucking private people that none of this shit should have ever happened to. And I don't want to be talking about it and then blurt their fucking names out, right? Because I don't know them. Their name shouldn't be in my mouth. I should have never known their fucking name, never heard of them. But I think those people might lose the war of attrition and settle.
And one of the Sandy Hook parents that's suing Jones, he's a former, I forget his name. He's a former Alex Jones fan, and I think with him in particular, he won't settle, because like that, to have someone that you admire, say the death of your child is a fraud. I think he's not gonna settle with that one.
Yeah, I didn't know that about him. Like I said, once I found out all this was going on, I made it my business not to even look into them, because I just thought, I don't want to be just another person digging in like to their, But if this guy's kind of said stuff on the record or whatever, I don't think it's wrong that you know it. I just I decided that I'm not going to dig. I don't want to. I just didn't want to know, right? Like I may be a troll, but I'm certainly empathetic to parents who lost their kids in a tragic shooting or whatever, and then had Alex Jones and his fans harass them to the point where they had to move several times. Fuck that.
Yeah. All right, I think we can wrap it up from there. I know you're busy. How can people support Echoplex?
There's a couple different ways. You can just basically, all this stuff's on our website, EchoplexMedia.com, and you can click the support tab. We have t-shirts. We don't make much money on those, but we'd like people to rock our t-shirts. Of course, we have Patreon. Everybody has Patreon. You can just give us money over PayPal. We're on Twitch. You can subscribe on Twitch, although Amazon takes 50% of that. So if you're thinking about doing a monthly subscription, maybe Patreon, because between Patreon and PayPal, if you do $5, they take like 20 cents, which is far better than 50%. And I don't know, like, read our blogs. You can follow us on Facebook. Mostly we're trying to build up our Twitch channel and our YouTube channel. Both of those are username Echoplex Media. We got into the video game kind of late. We were kind of stupid, I think. Our format was, we were doing live audio podcasts, and we were doing pretty good on the listenership and stuff, but we kind of screwed up. So we're playing catch up in a lot of ways. Even though, there are people who have a much bigger following on, for example, Twitch than I do, but I noticed that they're new to broadcasting, or at least like they're they're not as comfortable talking. I'm like, oh, they've been on Twitch longer than me, but that's 2018, and I've been podcasting since 2015. So yeah, we're just trying to build that stuff up, get more people interacting, more people feeding us stories. So we could do better. We can do a better job, spend less time the end game would be to kind of spend less time hunting for the stories and only be kind of searching through our own Discord for them. Oh, and also join our Discord at discord.me/echoplex. That's free, and we'd like everybody to join. Also, while you're over at Patreon, you should give this guy some money on Patreon too.
Oh, thank you.
Spread it around. If you're going to do 10 for us, do 5 for us and 5 for the ex-conspiracy theorist over here.
All right, David. Really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. We'll have you on for an interview soon too. I'm just trying to figure out what about.
Okay, yeah, let me know.
All right, thanks, man.
All right, see you.